Well, I think it's difficult. I mean, it's quite possible that if you put a dislikable person at the centre of a novel, you will lose many readers. I mean, it's one reason why I decided to have comic elements and to make him every now and then a victim of his circumstances. But that was one wish, to keep the reader with him. Those of us writing in English, still live, if you want a fat scoundrel in your fiction, we live in the very long and very wide shadow of Falstaff. Why do we like Falstaff? He's a smelly drunk. You'd cross the street if you bumped into him. He seems to embody, and maybe it's an act of self-forgiveness, he embodies our weaknesses. And if such a character can be posed within an ambience of striving and comic victimhood, the aim is really to try and seduce your reader into at least accepting him. But in some ways, you know, we in the West certainly do have more than our fair share of resources and food and energy and many other goods of life. And so Michael Beard's love of junk food is really an extension of what we all are. We all love our junk, whether it's our cars or our air conditioning or our toasty radiators. Mm-hmm. I mean, in a sense, we're great consumers just like him.
But he also has the ability to tell the truth, backed up by his science. He often makes himself unpleasant by reverting to the facts as opposed to what he's supposed to be believing.
He does, while he's on the boat in the Arctic, take on a novelist who wants to maintain that all the uncertainty in the world surely has its roots in Heisenberg's.
A slim novelist.
A very slim novelist,
as I recall.
with rimless specs.
Yeah.
Who wants to make out a case that Heisenberg's uncertainty principle underpins all our own uncertainties. And that makes Beard very, very cross indeed, because he wants to point out that, you know, over a succession of observations, you can actually derive a great deal of information in this way. And I got a physicist friend to help me draw up the equation of right plus wrong divided by the square root of 2 is what you would have to put your name to if you wanted to make an ethical correlation with Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. And I was rapping the knuckles of my younger self, especially in The Child in Time, when I rather wantonly ransacked physics. And I know Lee Smolin is in the audience, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I was pretty careless in the raids I conducted on, especially in quantum mechanics, for imagery. It was a form of exoticism, really, such as you might find in the poetry of Keats. Lists of, you know, delicious things like quince and plum and goods, as it were, without fully understanding the things themselves.
The other thing that Beard does frequently is he compares the life of an artist to the life of a scientist. Well, for instance, when he tries to pick up his first wife, he flash memorizes 6 lines of Milton. He reads 4 essays about Milton, which I thought was going to a lot of trouble to get her into bed.
He reads all of Milton.
It reads all of Milton?
Yeah, it reads right through, from Samson Agonistes, Lycidas.
Oh, well, I didn't get that from the book, and then he goes to a lot of trouble.
He spends a whole week reading Milton.
Yeah. And then he says none of it came close to advanced mathematics in terms of difficulty.
Well, sometimes I hide behind this character to voice a prejudice or two that I couldn't really defend as an educational policy, but I sometimes wonder whether the study of English literature in universities is not a complete waste of time, and that we could all be reading these novels anyway, and that we, the liberal humanists in our educations, if you're reasonably psychiatrically stable and halfway intelligent, and panic now and then about a term paper, anyone of moderate intelligence can get a good degree. I mean, it's a fact. But try getting your mind around Dirac's equation or special and general theories. It's really heavy lifting. And yet somehow we managed to look down, especially when I was a student, we used to look down on all the kind of nerds and geeks who did physics and maths. And now I understand that they were daily confronting some of the hardest things ever thought. And how on earth did we manage to look down on them? So Michael Beard, in order to seduce the girl who turns out to be his first wife, is amazed, really, that he's up every morning at 8:30 for the first of his lectures at 9 o'clock, 6 lectures a day, confronting the hardest things I've ever thought. And the liberal arts know-nothings are getting up at 2 p.m. every day for their 1 or 2 tutorials a week, with the occasional panic about a term paper, and sailing through. He does, 30 years later, Michael Beard does meet a professor of English in Hong Kong who says, well, look, listen, oh boy, if you had seduced 90 women with 90 poets and remembered them all, the poets, that is, and managed to form at the end of this process an overview, then you would have deserved an English degree. But for Michael Beard, it remains, at the age of 20, an intellectual shadow line that he crosses. He will no longer let some literature type lord it over him intellectually.
Mm. One of the things I remember reading Between the Sheets and The Cement Garden and the early books of stories, and thinking that you were unique because most stories seem to have the action on the outside and the psychology on the inside, and you seem to turn the story inside out as if it was sort of a glove, and the psychology was on the outside and the mystery was on the inside. And you would write stories, Solid Geometry, about a man who folded his wife into the 6th plane and she disappeared, and all that was, and his grandfather tried, all was left was his penis. I mean, bizarre stories. Like, you still seem interested in psychology, and that seems to be an unpopular thing these days. I mean, you almost seem to be reading Freud as you're writing.
I don't think anyone could be a novelist without being interested in psychology, at least in the general sense that literature, especially the novel, is a sort of tool for the unfolding and investigation of human nature. So inevitably, psychology, in the non-academic sense, I mean, it's very difficult to pick up a textbook of psychology and feel, once you spent an hour or two with it, that you know any more about human nature than you did when you started. Very difficult indeed. Whereas I think an hour or two with Madame Bovary or Anna Karenina or any of the books that we love will demonstrate great things to us. But it's quite hard to put into words these notions, this sense of a knowledge into any kind of terse or definable theorem or anything like that. That's why I think we will always need literature as an investigation of the small print of consciousness. So I don't think I'm different in any respect with this. We've found over the last 30 years that the novel has been remarkably robust against all the other attractions that are on offer.
So you don't agree with Philip Roth when he says it's on its way out, it'll all be TV?
I thought there was a touch of après moi le déluge.